They called it the Long Silence, the centuries after the Drevakai lost their last great war. In that time, cities turned to sand, oceans turned gray, and in the halls of what little remained of their civilization, no child was taught to fight, only to endure. The war had lasted over 3,000 years. It wasn't a single battle or campaign, but an unending purge, carried out by a species with no name spoken anymore. The Drevakai had once called them the Iskari, though they weren't certain the Iskari had ever called themselves anything at all. The Iskari didn't conquer for glory. They didn't kill for resources. They destroyed to erase. And they nearly succeeded. Out of trillions, only a few 100,000 Drevakai remained. Scattered across hollowed moons and dead planets, they lived quiet, cloaked lives, surviving only because they were no longer considered worth the effort to exterminate. They told stories in whispers. They lit fires in metal husks. And they watched the stars like ghosts. But deep inside the temple of stone ash, beneath the planet Velen 3's crust, one voice finally broke the silence. "We will not endure another cycle," said Talran, the last grand strategist of the Drevakai. His voice echoed through the stone chambers, cracked from years of disuse. The elders murmured, some in disbelief, some in fear. "It has been too long," Ren continued. "We have grown clever, quiet, but not sharp. That was our failure. We fought like we were noble. They fought like they wanted us gone." "What do you propose?" an elder croaked. Ren turned to the great holomap. A red sphere blinked softly in the corner of the galaxy. A small blue world. "Earth," he said. "Humans." The first contact wasn't easy. When the Drevakai reached Earth, they didn't come with warships or demands. They sent one ship, small, silver, unarmed. It hovered above a UN peace summit for 36 minutes before broadcasting a single message. "We do not ask for your armies. We ask for your minds. Teach us to fight like you do." The response took weeks. Earth's leaders were suspicious, skeptical, but eventually they agreed. On one condition: no weapons training, no technology trade. Only tactics, history, and theory. They would teach, but not fight. The Drevakai agreed. 6 months later, Earth sent its first instructors. The planet where the Drevakai chose to begin again was called Nerith. It was dry, wind-worn, and covered in scarred terrain. A perfect simulation of what most young warriors would face if war returned. The human instructors were handpicked: tacticians, strategists, military historians. No uniforms, no guns, just minds sharpened by generations of conflict. Among them was Captain Elias Brand, a retired field commander who had served in 7 planetary conflicts before vanishing from Earth's eye. He'd grown tired of war, but when the Drevakai request came through, he signed up without hesitation. "I want to see what survival looks like when it's desperate," he'd said. Elias's first day on Nerith was not what he expected. He was greeted by silence. Hundreds of Drevakai young standing in formation, unmoving, unblinking, bone-like armor covering their lean frames. They didn't salute. They didn't bow. They waited. "You expect me to turn these statues into tacticians?" he asked. "They are not statues," said Ren, who had met him personally. "They are blank slates, and they will absorb everything." And they did. The Drevakai learned human history in weeks. Not just the facts, the patterns. They studied how humans fought when outnumbered, how they ambushed, flanked, misled, how they sacrificed pieces to win the whole. They read about Thermopylae, Stalingrad, Hue City, New Shanghai. They memorized stories of human defiance, small teams holding back swarms, outposts surviving sieges by sheer force of will. They learned not just how humans won, but why. And the greatest lesson of all, humans didn't fear dying. They feared failing each other. The Drevakai found that idea intoxicating. Elias watched them grow, not in size, but in questions. They began to challenge him, not with disobedience, but with precision. Why sacrifice a scout if you can bait the enemy with false comms? What if the terrain is alive and reactive? How do you break morale without breaking the enemy's home? Elias answered as best he could, and when he couldn't, he told them the truth. You learn in fire. Theories don't bleed. Soldiers do. But it wasn't just Elias. The other human instructors, strategic analysts, game theorists, cultural historians, they all said the same thing. They learned too fast. In a month, they were replicating 20th century Earth campaigns with perfect timing. In 2 months, they were improving them. Ren, the old strategist, watched silently as the classrooms turned into war rooms. They don't want to survive anymore, he told Elias one night by the flickering fire screen. They want to return. The first real test came unexpectedly. A Drevakai listening post on the edge of the shattered corridor, once forbidden territory, picked up movement. Not pirates. Not traitors. Iskari, a small recon group. 3 ships. No formal insignia. But the energy signatures were unmistakable. After all these years, they had returned. Panic spread through the Drevakai colonies like wildfire. But not among the students. Let us respond, said one of them. Vayankal, barely 20 standard cycles old. We have no ships, the elders argued. Then we'll use theirs, Vayan replied. What followed was the first Drevakai offensive in nearly 2 millennia. 3 small squads, led by students and advised by human tacticians, moved into the corridor using old mining freighters modified with sensor-disrupting plating. Elias advised from the command room, but did not interfere. If they fail, they die. If they succeed, they evolve, he whispered to Ren. The operation took 20 hours. The students didn't just ambush the Iskari, they disoriented them, split their formations, sabotaged their internal systems with simple algorithm loops, techniques taken from Earth's cyber warfare files dated 2 centuries earlier. By the time the sun rose over the northern basin of Nerith, the Iskari ships were reduced to debris, and the students returned, no casualties, only silence. And then, cheering. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Drevakai had won. But the joy didn't last. 3 days later, an ancient Iskari transmission was detected across 6 systems simultaneously. Not a warning, not a threat, just a single phrase, encoded in a decayed dialect from the old war. Echo received. Judgment begins. The message echoed through every relay, every comm satellite, every forgotten relay probe that had once drifted in cold silence. Echo received. Judgment begins. Elias sat in the war room on Nerith, hands folded, jaw tense. It's not a threat, he said aloud. It's a ritual, a trigger phrase. Ren nodded slowly. They were never concerned with vengeance. They sought only to finish what they began. 2 weeks passed in silence. No Iskari ships. No response. Just the ripple of tension through the galaxy. Human High Command offered to recall their personnel. Elias declined. If this is the beginning, then I stay. And so did the others. In the 3rd week, a deep space survey team spotted something in orbit around the shattered moon of Yidros 6. A shape. Massive. Dormant. It was over 90 kilometers long, built like a blade stabbed through space, blackened metal covered in scars from old battles. An Iskari dreadform. One of the ancient command ships used during the final burn. The last extermination wave that had decimated the Drevakai homeworld. It had been left to drift, forgotten, until now. And now it was waking up. They don't think in decades, Elias said, watching the Dreadform's energy signature slowly rise. They think in eras. They heard what you did, and they remember. The Drevakai students, once flush with victory, now sat quietly in the war chambers. Not afraid, but focused. Then we strike first, Vayankal said. We will not wait for their judgment. Elias turned to him. You've won one battle, not a war. I'm not asking to win. I'm asking to show them we are not prey. Reluctantly, the council approved a new operation. Operation Emberlight. The goal: disable the Dreadform before it reached full activation. Not destroy. It was too large, too ancient. But cripple. Delay. Force the Iskari to hesitate. A fleet of modified freighters, drop carriers, and stealth bombers assembled over Nerith. The humans contributed tactical intel, false comm signals, and a field of satellite decoys to mask the approach. Elias stood beside Ren as the fleet launched. You're gambling your next generation, he said. No, Ren replied. I'm unleashing them. The mission began well. The Drevakai ships broke the outer field of the Dreadform with minimal resistance. They moved with the precision of those born not into war, but into strategy. Vayankal and his team landed on the dorsal platform and planted sequence charges along the Dreadform's energy conduits. But then everything changed. A pulse, a deep, resonating hum that echoed through space like the toll of a cathedral bell. The Dreadform spoke. Pattern confirmed. Bloodline defiant. Sequence unlocked. And the stars above the Dreadform began to move. Not light. Ships. Thousands. Sleeping just beyond the edge of gravitational perception. Now waking. Now moving. They emerged from behind Yidros, 6 like predators roused from hibernation. Massive vessels, some angular and sharp, others organic and bloated. Each bore the markings of the Iskari, symbols carved into hulls like flesh, glowing with red-gold light. Elias stood at the command screen, the data flooding in too fast to track. 78 ships, a human analyst whispered. Correction, said the AI calmly. 114. Increasing. On the Dreadform's hull, Vayankal froze. We've triggered them, he said over the comm. The Dreadform was a beacon. Elias slammed his fist against the console. Abort the mission. Extract. Now. Ren's voice broke in, clear, firm. They cannot outrun that many ships. Elias stared at the screen. Then we buy them time. Back on Nerith, defense systems flared to life. Satellite cannons, planetary shields, auto mines, all systems that had gathered dust for centuries, suddenly alive again. The students still on the ground rushed to war stations. But even as they moved, a strange calm fell over the Drevakai. They had waited for this, not to win, but to finally answer. In orbit, the first wave of Iskari ships opened fire. The Dreadform, now fully awake, began to rotate. Its central lance weapon glowed, aimed not at the Drevakai fleet, but at Nerith itself. They're going for decapitation, Elias said. Destroy the teachers, the students, the soil. They want to burn the roots, Ren replied. Not just the tree. And then, something unexpected happened. As the Dreadform charged its main weapon, a single Drevakai ship, student-piloted, broke formation and accelerated. It wasn't part of the plan. Who was that? Elias demanded. The signal flickered on screen. Tolanvar, the pilot said. This is my answer. The ship dove straight into the Dreadform's weapon port, its engines overloading. Elias opened his mouth to yell. Too late. The explosion was blinding. The Dreadform's weapon failed. Power collapsed across its forward systems. In that moment of vulnerability, the remaining student ships moved in like wolves. They swarmed. They carved. And for the first time in recorded history, an Iskari dreadform fell. But the sky was still full of Iskari, and the countdown had just begun. The dreadform's corpse drifted through space, its severed bow bleeding fire into the void. It had taken nearly a third of the Drevakai strike force to bring it down. Most would not return, but its fall sent a message through the stars. We are not ghosts. On Nerith, silence hung over the war room. Elias stood with his hands on the table, eyes burning, throat dry. The students on the ground had gathered around broadcast towers, watching the feeds. Some wept. Others clenched their fists. Ren watched the sky from the temple steps. He said nothing for a long time. Then, it begins again. But the battle was far from over. The Iskari ships had paused, not out of fear, but calculation. Like an animal reassessing a threat it had once considered extinct. Then they moved, all of them, not toward Nerith, toward Earth. Elias's console pinged. A final Iskari transmission scrolled across the screen. We see the hand behind the blade. The humans are the fire. We will extinguish the source. Earth's response was immediate. Defensive fleets scrambled. The Martian orbital yards went dark, transferring power to emergency shield arrays. Lunar Command authorized first strike contingencies. But even the fastest human ships were days away from intercept, and the Iskari were hours out. Back on Nerith, Ren gathered the remaining instructors, human and Drevakai alike. We made a choice, he said. We lit a torch in the dark. Now they come for the flame. Elias nodded slowly. So we do what humans do best. We stall them. The Drevakai survivors boarded old cruisers, half-rusted and barely space-worthy. Elias joined them. A student ran up to him before launch. You trained us to think, to adapt, but why do you fight? Elias looked down at him. His voice was low, steady. Because someone taught me. The fleet jumped straight into the path of the Iskari advance. The final scene plays in silence. The Drevakai ships, black against a field of stars. The human instructors among them, no longer just teachers, but warriors once again. And at the far edge of space, the Iskari fleet, like a shadow spreading across the galaxy. Then a flicker. In the deep, something wakes. A third signal. Not Drevakai. Not Iskari. Something older. Sequence confirmed. Awakening authorized. To be continued.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for more Human Supremacy Vanguard stories. We are a young channel and really appreciate your support in helping us to grow. Thank you.